Welcome to the PYQ discussion on the topic of behavioral geography. So in behavioral geography, there were primarily two questions, that is question number 7 and question number 10. However, there is one more question, but that has been categorized under the miscellaneous topic, and that was related to the topic of time geography. But since it was not being taught in the classes, in the regular classes, and therefore it was kept in the miscellaneous category, although Himanshu sir has taught them in the 500 classes. I hope it is clear. So today we'll be discussing these two questions, question number 7 and question number 10. And we will see that some portion of question number 7 can be used in question number 10 as well. So let's start with question number 7 discussion first. So the question number 7 says, discuss the approaches to study the behavioral geography. So the question tag is discuss. That means we have to give what, we have to give why. At the same time, we have to give shortcomings or negatives wherever possible. I hope it is clear. At the same time, it is asking the various approaches to study the behavioral geography. And it's a 15 marker, came in the year 2015. That means we have 3 pages, and therefore we must have the required content to write a good answer on this, because you have to fill at least 3 pages. I hope it is clear. So again, as I have said, that in the different approaches and different paradigms in our perspectives topic, we have to give specifically the context based introduction if it is asking about a particular paradigm. At the same time, you can also give what kind of introduction, but it is always suggested and advised to use the why kind of introduction so as to give more background of your knowledge to the examiner. I hope it is clear. And therefore, we can actually start with a why kind of introduction first. And if you want a what kind of introduction, that I also have given at the bottom. So you have to use either the above one which we'll be discussing or the what kind of introduction. I hope it is clear. So why kind of introduction के अंदर we can write that जो behavioral geography है उसका context we can write. So there is something called as behavioral geography, and then there is something called as behavioralism. So the evolution of behavioralism is a very long back phenomena. So the evolution of behavioralism can be seen in the works of Kant, where Kant also actually taught that there is the significance of mind in perceiving the reality or perceiving the environment, and therefore he gave the concepts like pneumona and phenomena. At the same time, it can also be seen in the works of Karl Square in the cultural determinism he was actually discussing. At the same time, in human geography, it came later words. So in human geography, behavioral approach came later words, but first it came in the physical geography. I hope it is clear. So in the contemporary times, हम वहाँ से start करेंगे, तो we will be more focused to the question, and we will be actually saving our space for the other things to write. So what we can write at behavioral geography. Behavioral geography came in geography first through physical geography during the period of 1940s and 50s in the works of Gilbert. Then we have Herbert, Simpson, and the works of Cates. However, it entered into human geography in the late 1960s through the works of Julian Wolpert. I hope it is clear. So behavioral geography as an approach first came in physical geography in the period between 1940s and 50s, and here it was seen in the works of Gilbert, Simpson, and Cates. So Gilbert, you can specifically remember that Gilbert was actually from Chicago University, Chicago School, and he was actually doing what? He was doing hazards and disaster studies. And there he actually saw the behavioral patterns of the humans or individuals, and he also wrote one thesis, that is human adjustments in floods, in the year 1945. 5. So human adjustments in flood. You don't have to write that much, but again, at the same time, you don't also have to write the short forms. I am just writing short forms so as to have a good speed of the class. I hope it is clear. So you can first write behavioral geography came in geography first through physical geography in the works of Gilbert. Bracket you can write hazards and disaster studies, Simpson, Cates. However, it entered into human geography in the late 1960s through the works of Julian Wolpert. I hope it is clear. So this is a context-based why kind of introduction for your question. At the same time, if you want to write what kind of introduction, you can simply write that behavioral geography is an approach to human geography that attempts to understand human activity in space, place, and environment by studying it at the disaggregate level. Disaggregate level का मतलब क्या है? Since quantitative revolution was actually treating humans at an aggregate level, it was treating humans at a homogeneous group of people or individuals. But behavioral geography क्या करता है उसको disaggregate level पे ले जाता है. और QR में क्या था? That humans were treated as an aggregate being. सारे humans को एक ही तरीके से they used to consider. So this was the thing of analysis at the level of individual person. Behavioral geographers analyze the data on the behavior of individual people, recognizing that individuals vary from each other. I hope it is clear. So you can either write what or why kind of introduction. Then moving ahead, we will focusing straightforwardly on the aspect of approaches. So approaches to study behavioral geography was actually evolved and developed in two phases. They developed in two phases. So we have the first phase here. So this is a way to present your answer more better. So the first phase actually started from late 1960s to early 1970s. And here the main focus was on to study the patterns of behavior. In other words, if I want to say, it was to know the what of behavior. To know the what of behavior in a geographical space. And in this particular thing, we have many methods and many approaches to study the patterns of behavior. One such was the aspect of mental maps, which was later developed by Gould and which was later been more evolved and developed by Kenneth Boulding and the Downs aspect. At the same time, it was also using this method of behavioral metrics of Pred, and it was also seen in the time geography aspect of Hagersten. But there was a specific question of time geography which we will study later words, so I am not elaborating this time geography here. I hope it is clear. Now the second phase started from 1970s onwards, and here the focus was on general understanding of spatial behavior. So earlier phase mein what was the aspect and the focus point? Here the focus point was to understand the why of the phenomena or why of the behaviors in geography space. So first phase में what पे focus करेंगे, फिर कुछ criticisms emerge होंगे, and therefore the later phase geographers of behavioral geography would be focusing more on the why aspect of the behavior in geographical space. I hope it is clear. And this is here we will be discussing new techniques of game theory, more stochastic models which came, the aspect of utility, maximization theory. There we will be studying the Bird's choice model for decision making. I hope it is clear. So this will be the approach to study this particular topic. Here you can just write after the introduction, you can just use this particular presentation so as to impress the examiner that you know what you are going to write. I hope it is clear. But you don't have to duplicate much of the keywords. Now in phase 1 की बात करते हैं. तो phase 1 में it started from 1960s and can be seen in the work of Julian Wolpert. So Julian Wolpert was actually doing or studying the productivity levels of farms in Sweden, and what he observed was that the productivity of these farms was lower than expected. And what was the reason? Because he saw that humans or farmers in Sweden were not economically rational beings. Rather, they were what? They were boundedly rational. What does this mean is that जो QR था, in QR, one of the main assumption of QR was that human beings are economic rational beings. So this was the assumption of QR. But we know that for becoming economically rational, we require two things: that we should first have all the information. We should have first all the information regarding the particular phenomena. At the same time, we have the ability. We have the ability to process what? All the information. But rarely, or in most idealist of the idealist circumstances, we will not find that this thing is going to happen. Either humans are always on the aspect of information asymmetry, and if they have the overall information about a particular phenomena, still they don't have the ability to process the entire information. And therefore, what he found, Julian Wolpert, was that humans are not economically rational bounded, or farmers and students are not what? Economically rational beings, but rather they are what? Boundary rational. I hope it is clear. And as a result, the productivity would have been high if the farmers were economically rational, but since the farmers are boundary rational, therefore the productivity was lower than expected. Maybe farmer का मन किया कि उसको इतनी productivity चाहिए इस साल में. Maybe farmer का मन किया कि he does not want to do more productive investment in the fields in terms of fertilizers and other inputs of agriculture. I hope it is clear. So this was the work. So you just have to mention this particular thing, कि the first phase started with the works of Julian Wolpert, and then you will be starting with the different methods and approaches to study the behavioral geography in the phase 1. And one such important method was the method of mental map. But you have to specifically know that the mental map approach in first phase was what? It was structural mental mapping. It was structural mental mapping. अब इसका मतलब क्या होता है? Again, in structural mental mapping, what we will be focusing in? We will be focusing to study the what of the behavior of individuals or people or groups. So initially इसमें इस mental mapping के अंदर जो goal था, goal actually bought the technique of ranking procedure method. And what this ranking procedure method used to do was, people were given a list of choices. Usually क्या है कि लोगों के पास जाके एक list of choices लोगों को दे दी जाती थी. People were given a list of choices and people have to rank those choices as per their value system or as per their information. So यहाँ पर क्या हो रहा है? People will be given a particular list of choices and people will be ranking them, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, and based on that behavioral patterns will be drawn. Behavioral patterns will be drawn और what उसका पता लगेगा हमें. I hope it is clear. तो अब इसको mental mapping का एक मैंने particular chart बनाया. You have to remember this particular chart. So mental mapping is always of two types. That is, first is structural और second है evaluative. इसको हम देखेंगे, इसको हम second phase के लिए रखेंगे. This is for second phase. So structural वाली जो थी, इसके अंदर Galt's का ranking order procedure we have to study, and I told you that it was of the mechanism that people were given a list of items and choices and people have to rank their choices according to their personal know-how. So if we take an example of child sex ratio, so let's suppose this is a list of choices which is being given to the people. I hope it is clear. So list of choices says what? That people want first child as boy, people want first child as girl, second child as boy, second child as girl, third child as boy, third child as girl. Or there may be a choice that it doesn't matter for people that whether their first child is boy or a girl. So based on this particular list of choices, people will be ranking. Some will rank this particular one, more will rank this one, individual 1, individual 2 also rank this one, individual 3 will also rank this one. Some progressive people will rank this as 1. So this is how they will be doing the ranking order procedure, and based on this particular theory we will be ascertaining the behaviorals in space. So let's say we have India on this particular end. So what we are finding is कि when we are going towards what? North and northwestern region, what we are finding is that child sex ratio is declining. At the same time, when we are going towards the southern states, which is having more matrilineal structure of societies, what we are finding is it is having more what? More child sex ratio. I hope it is clear. So this is how we are actually finding the what of the behavior using these particular ranking order procedure. And later Gold also developed group ranking order procedure. So यहाँ पर this particular aspect is called as structure mental mapping. So first phase के अंदर we will briefly write the works of Julian Wolpert in 1 or 2 or 3 lines. Then we will be writing this method of mental mapping, and that will be our structural mental mapping. Then after that we will be moving towards the behavioral matrix of Pred, because this is also of phase 1. तो यहाँ पर what Pred did was कि 1970s Pred proposed a behavioral matrix as the first generalization to study the patterns of behavior. Again, what it has written, study of the patterns of behavior. Again, it is what or to get the info regarding the behavior. I hope it is clear. So here he draw the behavioral matrix. What it says is कि if you are going downwards, you are actually increasing the quantity and quality of information is increasing on the downward side. That is, you are going towards perfect knowledge. And when you are moving towards left to right, what it is saying is कि the ability to use or the ability to process this information is also increasing. So can I say that this particular location on the behavioral matrix is the most idealistic one, or is the most ideal scenario of ascertaining a behavior or the behavior of an individual? So this was the behavioral matrix given by Pred. So what Pred says is कि let's say this is particular an area which is a village society. This is an area which is a tier 4 and 5 cities. Then this is, we have tier 1 cities, and this is, we have more metropolitan cities. So let's say metropolitan cities have more what? More information with them because of all the medias they are using, all the digital platforms they are on. At the same time, since there more literacy is found in tier 1 and class 1 cities and metropolitan areas, there we are also actually finding that individuals is having more what ability and mind faculty and agency to comprehend or to process this particular information. So we can write a particular generalization. Of course, it is not a case which can be an idealistic one. It is not a thing which is very rigid. We are just giving just a basic generalization. So what Pred said that individuals do not stay at the same position. Also, इसमें Pred ने क्या बताया that individuals cannot be at the same position. Example, during the kind of emergencies like COVID-19, individuals can have less of information regarding that particular phenomena of pandemic. At the same time, their ability to process the information regarding the particular phenomena of pandemic is also low. So they might be shifting back into this particular matrix. So what Pred said that individuals do not stay at same position in the matrix as they learn and gain experiences, and so their position changes. So it is both back and forth. At the same time, they shift and make new decisions. They change the environment in which they operate. Greater the information and learning, the better decisions are taken and people are become decision leaders. However, the movement or shift in the matrix is not always forward, as several shocks and failures can cause shifting backwards, which would start another learning curve. But after COVID, we are now on another learning curve or learning trajectory, and therefore we can again move towards this particular point. Then Pred was of the view that behavioral matrix represents the first gross approximation in behavioral geography, and argued that any theory is better than none, even if there are shortcomings. So it is better to have a theory than without any theory. And those theory में shortcomings are there, that is a better case than having no theory. Then Pred says, Pred also used the concept of time geography to elaborate the behavioral geography approaches. So time geography ko, the propounder of time geography was Heggersten, but the person who popularized time geography was Pred. So just after this particular topic of Pred, you can write 1 or 2 lines of criticisms that behavioral matrix is a 2D. We know that it's a 2D and vaguely defined, representing ambiguous and oversimplified aspects or versions of the complex reality of factors influencing the behavior. So first phase में what you will be writing? First phase में briefly works of Julian Wolpert. Then mental mapping. Mental mapping में कौन सी mental mapping? Structural. Then the works of behavioral matrix by Pred. And when you will be studying what? Time geography, you can briefly write 2 or 3 lines of time geography here as well. We will take a whole question on time geography under the miscellaneous section. I hope it is clear. Then just after this, you will have to move on the phase 2. Phase 2 में. Now why phase 2 started? ठीक है? Whatever I am saying, I am giving you the background, the context of the question and the related answer. but you don't have to write everything I'm speaking. I'm just giving you more information so that you will be able to handle if question is actually of a different verbatim, or if actually question comes from another fringe topics of this main topic or theme of behavioral geography. So phase 2 में क्या हुआ? Phase 2 में again behavioral geography started facing in criticisms from external academic discipline. ठीक है? So other disciplines were actually saying them, these behavioralists of phase 1, that they are essentially what? They are essentially positivistic, because what they are doing is they are again doing or taking those positivistic tools to actually ascertain the what of the behavior. At the same time, there were also certain internal criticisms were also start emerging, and one such internal criticisms were starting coming from Golage and Stimson, and they both coined the term, what? They coined the term of analytical behavioral geography. So you have to introduce your phase second, that internal criticisms from Golage and Stimson were started coming, and what they were saying that the positivistic dichotomy of or between facts and beliefs or values should be rejected, and both values and beliefs should also be scientifically noted. I hope it is clear. Or should also be scientifically studied, or should be studied in a scientific manner. I hope it is clear. So they coined the term called as analytical behavioral geography, and therefore the later works or the later approaches to study behavioral geography were all based on this analytical aspect. I hope it is clear. Also, at the same time, you can write one line on the views of Pimkin. So what Pimkin says, that a lot of time has been wasted by the earlier phase 1 behavioral geographers in understanding the what of the behavior, but they have done very little to explore. They have done very little to explore the mental constructs, that underpin such a behavior. That is what के पीछे का जो why है उसके लिए कोई काम ही नहीं किया है. ठीक है? I hope it is clear. So mental maps in phase 2 were actually evolved to become more evaluative. अब evaluative mental maps क्या होते हैं, which that we can see. Evaluative mental maps, again we will be exploring the mental constructs that underpins the behavior. So mental maps को अगर देखें अपन, so this was the mental mapping in the second phase, that is evaluative. So what it does is to explore the mental constructs that underpin them. So this was the what, but what causes on which this particular pattern, ठीक है, what are the causes behind this what are the causes behind this pattern were actually seen or were actually explored in this evaluative what mental mapping. So here we are actually focusing on the causes behind such pattern of behavior or the what of behavior. I hope it is clear. So then why people are wanting first child as boy? Because they are actually going by the economic status. They might be going by the societal structures of patriarchy versus matrilineal structure of the societies. They might be having a psychological bias towards male child. They have a psychological or religious orientation in which the preference of male child is always on the topmost priority. I hope it is clear. So these are the mental constructs which are based on these second aspects. So evaluative mental mapping में क्या हो रहा है? With this particular list of choices, we are again giving them another list of choices, and this another list of choices is actually helping us to decode the mental construct and the underlying factors and causes which are responsible for this particular what and for this particular pattern we are seeing in space. I hope it is clear. Then, so this evaluative mental mapping will be coming in the phase 2. Then other aspects of phase 2 will be the theory of utility maximization, in which what individuals always go for the aspect of utility maximization. They find utility in most of the works they are doing. At the same time, there was inclusion of game theory. There was inclusion of stochastic models in which most statistical formulas were used. What was the opinion of them was? The opinion of them was that large scale patterns, patterns can be decoded, using small scale patterns. And therefore, to understand large scale patterns, we have to what? We have to do extrapolation. We have to do extrapolation of these small scale pattern to arrive at the large scale patterns. I hope it is clear. Then this particular theory of utility maximization, game theory, can also be seen in the works of Birds. So Birds was a behavioral geographer in the second phase. So in the 1989, he gave choice sets in spatial decision making process. So what he said was that any individual has this particular choice set. This is a choice set which an individual is having. This choice set is all the available opportunities and all the available possibilities an individual is having. But this choice set is subjected to certain external and internal factors. And one such, let's say, internal factors can be this internal factor. This internal factor can be the factor of, let's say, individual's behavior, ठीक है, or value system. I hope it is clear. So this is an internal factor, and this internal factor will actually discard this particular portion of the available choices. So these are all the available choices, all available choices. यहाँ तक है ये all available choices or opportunity an individual is having. But due to the internal factors, that particular individual is actually discarding this particular portion of individual choices. I hope it is clear. Now the remaining choices are called as objective choices. Again, इस objective choices के अंदर there is a portion that will be again discarded by an individual, let's say due to external factors. ठीक है, और ये external factors कौन कौन से हो सकते हैं? These external factors can be the socio-economic setup of the society, and therefore the individual again discard this particular portion. Now this particular sample choice set is left, and this is called as effective choice set. Again, effective choice के अंदर you will be again having some discardings. ठीक है, then again due to some internal factors, due to your value system, due to your psychological bias, and so forth. So therefore you will be arriving at an optimal choice set. And then from the optimal choice set, you will again discard some aspects which are not possible for you to carry forward, and therefore the last thing which will be remaining will be your actual behavior. I hope it is clear. So these things, all these things, these values and beliefs will be now scientifically measured, and in a scientific manner they will be studied, and as a result of which the possible choice sets and possible sets of available opportunities will be seen, and the issues or the portions of the available choices which are not possible in a practical world, which we can actually take forward, will be discarded on each stage. I hope it is clear. So this was Bird's view, which can be given. So these all things can be written, and in the conclusion you can write that although behavioral geography tried to give man his due place, which was not given in the quantitative revolution, we know that quantitative revolution actually dehumanized the human geography. At the same time, quantitative revolution was not giving any attention to the normative aspects of the society, the norms of the society, and as a result, behavioral geography tried to give man his due place by understanding the behavior of individuals at a disaggregate level. But they remained essentially what? Positivist. इनको humanist they also called as neo-positivist. I hope it is clear. According to humanist, values are given secondary role in behavioral geography, and they usually enter from the back door in behavioral geography. I hope it is clear. So you can write this conclusion, you can write any other conclusion in which you will be appraising also the behavioral geography. So any kind of conclusion you want to write, you can write, and this will be your discussion regarding this particular question, that what are the approaches to study behavioral geography. Approaches we have divided into two phases, phase 1, phase 2, and there we will be discussing the particular aspect. Now we'll see the next question. So moving on to the question number 2, we have it mentioned as question number 10th in your PYQ sheet. So the question number 10 says, elaborate the concept of mental map. And it was a 10 marker, came in the year 2014. So there is a proper gap between this particular year. So now you can expect such a question on methods and tools and techniques of behavioral geography जो उन्होंने use किए थे geographers ने, and therefore you are having 2 pages to write this particular topic, but you have ample amount of content to write this answer, so you have to be very much specific to write this particular answer. So again, we know that whenever there is a technical concept involved, okay, in our case it is mental mapping. So what it is, a technical keyword, and if a keyword is technical, what we will be doing is we will be writing the what or the definition of that particular thing. So we will start our introduction with what kind of introduction, and under this what kind of introduction we will be looking that mental map is a method, or we can say a tool in behavioral geography to objectively depict or showcase how one thinks or relates himself or herself to a particular space. So mental map जो है, इसको हम अगर other words में बोलें तो इसको cognitive map भी बोलते हैं. It is also called as cognitive map. और इसको other words में बोलते हैं geographies of mind. Geographies of mind. So you can write that mental map, also called as cognitive map or geographies of mind, is a method or a tool in behavioral geography to objectively depict, to objectively put the aspect of space on paper, ठीक है, or to objectively showcase how one thinks or relates himself or herself to a particular what space. And this space can be your landscape, can be your location, or can be your what, the aspect of place. And the difference between these three we have already discussed in the last class of sense of place. We have already discussed this particular thing. So this is the definition of it. In short, it is plotting. It is plotting of geographical space in an individual's mind. ये plotting हो कहाँ रही है? ये सारी plotting जो हो रही है वो individual के mind में हो रही है, and that is why we are also saying it as geographies of mind. Example, you came to Delhi, you started taking your classes in Vajiram, in other institute, so you started having a mental image of the locality you are living, the classes you are taking, तो उसका जो अंदर का इंटीरियर है, वहाँ का जो अंदर का टीचर आ रहा है, everything is being recorded in your mind, and that particular thing is actually situated in your mind as a mental image of the reality which exists outside yourself. I hope it is clear. So in short, it is plotting of geographical space in an individual's mind based on his or her perception of the environment. ठीक है? So these mental images are the perception of the objective reality outside yourself or the environment which you are seeing. उसका एक क्या है कि perception है. I hope it is clear. ठीक है? Everyone is having a mental image to become an IAS, but only few will able to clear that exam. So mental image तो सबके पास है. That if we'll study these books, if we'll study these topics, if we'll take these classes, we will become IAS. That is a mental image. And that is a perceived mental image. But whether you will be able to actually clear that particular or achieve that mental image will depends upon your different variables in your preparation. I hope it is clear. So now, to again elaborate this particular mental image, we can use the Downs model. Downs model to understand mental map or mental image. So again, with the introduction you can also write if you want that the topic was popularized. The topic was popularized by Peter Gould and Kenneth Boulding. So you can write this in the introduction itself with the definition if you want. So we can use the Downs model to understand the mental maps and the mental images to understand the behavior of individuals. So what it is saying is that there is something called as real world. Or real world mein, let's say we are seeing a particular tree. This real world is actually providing us. This real world actually provides us with information. So we are actually receiving the information from the real world outside. This information is being taken inside our mind or body with the help of perceptual senses. Okay? The senses through which we perceive: eyes, nose, ears, skin, touch, etc. So these are all the perceptual senses. Okay? I hope it is clear. Then with these inputs, we are actually processing these inputs with the help of the perceptual filters. The perceptual filters in our minds. Ethics के अंदर you have studied this as it is saying that schemas. एक particular technical term है schemas, और schemas in ethics are also called as packets of knowledge. So whatever the input you are getting from the environment, you will be actually processing that input with the existing knowledge and existing value system you are into. Okay? So a particular person who is having a habit of living in, let's say, more than 45 degrees Celsius of temperature, he will be perceiving the temperature outside as a normal temperature of summers. But a person who is actually having a habit of living in a cold kind of environment, in temperate kind of conditions, he will be perceiving that particular warm temperatures of summers in India or any tropical country as very, very warm or very, very hot. And he will have a bias that it is very hot in these tropical countries and it is very difficult to survive in these countries. So such kind of perceptual filters we will be using. And based on this perceptual filters and the input of information from the real world, we will be building an image of the environment. So again, this perceptual filters and this image is all a result of our value system. It will depend upon our personality, whether we are a personality who is more extreme or very accommodative in its behavior. Then culture, what is the culture of our society? Then belief, cognitive variables, etc., etc. So there was a question which came few years back from a topic of perspectives only, and that question was: write a short note on PAVE theory, which was actually a bouncer for many people. So this PAVE theory was actually focusing on the aspects of behavioral geography or the aspects of welfare geography. This के अंदर what the individual words were actually focusing on: P for perception, A for attitude of individuals, that is the personality, V for the value system, and E for the emotions. And all these things will form a mental image, and this mental image will help you to take decision and will ultimately decide your behavior. Again, all this, your behavior and decision making, which is a result of the image you have built, will again impact your perceptual filters, will again impact your information receiving senses, because you will be now craving for more information if you have certain information in your mind. Therefore, it is always said that the more you read, the more you can read, because now you have actually more strong and heavy perceptual filters. So this was the model of Downs. So both Goulding and Downs said what? So Goulding said what? That mental maps are a way to objectively study the subjective world. ठीक है, तो it is an objective way of studying the subjective world. We will see that later criticisms are there. No one can actually study the subjectivity involved in the complex world or societies objectively. So later there are shortcomings of this entire behavioral geography and the techniques and tools which we have used, but this was the thesis which was given by them. Again, if you want to see that, again mental mapping के अंदर we will be focusing that there were two types of mental maps as a procedure. ठीक है, so mental maps as a procedure, because the question is saying the concept of mental mapping. So mental maps as a procedure के अंदर Golding has given, has talked about rank order size, and in this particular mental mapping there were two flavors. ठीक है, one flavor was structural mental mapping, which we have already seen in the phase 1 of behavioral geography. I hope it is clear. So Golds gave here ranking order procedure. Again, I am again explaining this, that explain ranking order procedure says what? That individuals and people are given a list of choices, and from those list of choices, people have to rank their choices. Example, we are taking an example of child sex ratio, and individuals are given a list of choices to mark or give priority or give rank to their choices. So let's say individual 1 is actually given first rank to this preference of first child as boy. Individual 2, again a patriarchal mindset, again giving a first rank or first preference to this first child as boy. But there is individual 3 who is now more secular, who is now, let's say, more what? Impartial, who is now less patriarchal. He will actually say first ranking towards as the first child as girl. So individual will be marking their preferences for first child as boy, girl, second child as boy, girl, and some individuals can have or can mark that it doesn't matter whether it will be a boy or a girl. So their preference is always neutral. So based on these rankings, we can actually do what? We can actually map these things in what? In the space, in the geographical space. So we know that while we are moving from what? East towards north and northwest, we are seeing what? There is decline in the child sex ratio. And while we are moving actually from what? North to south, we are actually seeing what? Increase in the child sex ratio. So ranking order procedure under structural mental mapping will be helping us to know the what of behavior or the what of mental image. I hope it is clear. Or the what of mental maps. And later in the second phase of behavioral geography, the mental mapping actually evolved and it became more evaluative, because now apart from what, we are actually now focusing also on the causes behind those what's. So to explore the mental constructs that underpin them, so evaluative mental mapping came in the later stages of behavioral geography in the late 1970s and early 1980s. So it says what? That behind such a particular pattern which you are observing, there are other reasons or causes, and these causes are this particular list. So in this particular phase 2, people will be given this particular ranking list also to mark their choices and ranks. At the same time, they will be given another what? List of choices to again rank the second layer list of choices, which is a cause based choice list. So here some will mark that why they are wanting first child as boy, because they are more focusing on economic status. Some will say then because of their religious orientation, they are marking first child as boy. So forth and so on. So economic status, societal structure, patriarchal or matriarchal, psychological bias towards male child or unbiased towards female child, religious orientation. Some religions actually favor or have more what? Confidence on the male child. Okay? They are the bread earners of the societies or the families. So all those biases are actually the causes behind this particular what of behavior. So this phase 2 evaluative mapping is actually giving us what plus why as well. I hope it is clear. Then if you move ahead, we can write different characteristics also. So on the page first, we will be writing the introduction. Then we will briefly writing the views of Gould and bolding. and then we will be giving the diagram of downs, and we will be making a table in which we will be showing structural and what evaluative mental mapping, and we will be exhausting our page 1, and here we can draw a box showing structural and evaluative mental mapping, and there now we have this much of space left and conclusion space left, and there we will be actually focusing on the characteristics. So again, we know that mental maps are subjective. They are unique to every individual. Every individual will perceive the same thing differently. We will see the examples. It helps to represent the socio-spatial construction of an area. You have a mental image of the locality you are living, the grey pockets of that locality, the unhygienic pockets of that locality, the areas which are very much what hygienically best of this area. You have that image also. So it helps to do creation of sense of place in individual's mind. It relies on various symbolic elements like road, okay, like distance, like advertisement, so distance, symbols of kilometers, etc., signboards. So it relies on those aspects to have a mental image. It can be narrow, it can be broader. People who are having more mobility can have a more broader mental image. At the same time, it can be narrow for people who are actually confined within a particular space, having a situation of pause. I hope it is clear. Then it considers man as a thinking being. So Boulding said that mental map or the concept of mental map actually considers man as a thinking being, because since he or she is thinking, and therefore he or she is able to perceive a particular image of the outside reality. I hope it is clear. So as a result, individuals' transactions with real world are mediated by mental processes and cognitive representation of external environment. I hope it is clear. So that is कि आपका, this is you, and this is the environment, and this particular thing is being mediated by the mental processes, and these mental processes are your perceptual filters. I hope it is clear. And the works of Kevin Lynch on his book The Image of City can also be written. So he said what? That the image of city is also very dynamic, and it also very variable in time and space. It keeps on changing, it keeps on becoming better. At the same time, there are instances where it keeps on becoming poor side also, where it keeps on becoming a negative image also with regards to city. So let's say example of Wuhan as a city. So Wuhan for the world can be a very good hub for APIs, take active pharmaceutical indicators, ingredients before COVID-19 pandemic. But after COVID-19 pandemic, the Wuhan city, people now having a negative mental image regarding that particular city. So Kevin Lynch also wrote about that particular example. So you can write Boulding's ka view, you can write the work of Kevin Lynch ka book. At the same time, if you want to write any of the examples from here, you can write, you can take that this is a tree. So this is a famous example which is given in almost all the books. Okay? So this is a tree. But a tree for different people is different. Let's say there are different people having different value system. Some are driven by Gaianism or Gaianist philosophy. So for those people, the mental image or mental map of a tree is like a god. And therefore we see examples of sacred groves. We see example that people start worshipping these trees. Okay? The aspect of Bishnoi community, the aspect of Chipko movement, Epico movement, Silent Valley movement. So you can write all those things. At the same time, people like who are having the communist bent of mind, they will see tree as as something whose resources like fruits, timber, etc. should be distributed among all the people. Then there are certain accommodationist viewpoint wale log hain. Accommodationist will view this particular tree as something of economic sense, and therefore they try to increase their economic growth and development by using the outputs from this particular tree. At the same time, there will be some what? Interventionist, and they will see this particular tree for making, let's say, bullet train project, for making certain aspect of manufacturing hub. So they see this particular tree as a barrier and they will ask to cut this particular tree. I hope it is clear. So they will be favoring and focusing to cut this particular tree. So every person based on his value system. So these all are what? The different value systems. And based on their value system, there is a particular mental image which individuals carry in their mind, and with that they actually see the outer environment. I hope it is clear. And therefore in this year's particular current affair, there was two terms in news, that is, one was deep ecologism versus shallow ecologism. So we can say that people from these two categories are following what? Shallow ecologism, and people from this category, deep ecologism, are following these two categories. I hope it is clear. So it is variable in both time, space, it is subjective, it is unique to individuals, etc., etc. I hope it is clear. You can write these, and then you will not be having much space, but still you can write significances as your conclusion. Because 10 markers are usually not requiring or not asking you to give that much of depth. So in the conclusion part also we will be writing significances. So there will be multiple dimension and examiner will be bound to give us more marks. So significances के अंदर it helps to understand migration patterns. ठीक है, one of the main criticism of gravity model is कि it actually negates the aspect of behavior in migration. ठीक है, so what Julian Wolpert also says that for a migration pattern, an individual while taking a migration decision first says that what is the need to migrate or whether there is a need to migrate or not. At the same time, if that first step is clear ki yes, there is a need to migrate, then he sees that where to migrate. So gravity model does not take into account the behavioral aspect. So behavioral aspects will help us to understand the migration patterns well. Why more people are coming to Delhi and Mumbai as compared to Kolkata. Although the distance between Delhi and Bihar is more as compared to Bihar and Kolkata, but still people are coming more towards Delhi. That can be primarily because of some of the behavioral traits or the economic activities more in case of Delhi. So there are multiple reasons. So migration patterns को understand करने के लिए. Then to understand the environmental perception, we already saw 4 examples of this. So Gaianism, communism, then we have accommodationism, then interventionism. These two come under technocentric environmentalism. Technocentric environmentalism. These two come under what? Our ecocentric environmentalism. ठीक है? You can write the example of Madhav Gadgil versus Kasturi Rangan. Kasturi Rangan report debate. So Madhav Gadgil were actually driven by the aspect of ecocentric environmentalism, and therefore he said what? That entire 100% of Western Ghats should be dedicated or should be included under economic sensitive zones, while Kasturi Rangan was in favor of only 37%. And still the conclusion on this particular debate is still pending in the recent times. I hope it is clear. At the same time, it is also be useful to understand the natural hazards. So there are certain people who are having the behavior to live in the Khadar region of the Ganga, because Khadar is the region which is actually what? Annual enrichment hota hai yahan par. Annual enrichment is there, and this annual enrichment of new alluvium makes this particular area more fertile, and as a result some people live in these vulnerable zones of Khadar in the Indo-Ganges plains. At the same time, there are certain people who are living on the Bhangar areas. So that can be one thing. There are certain people who are living in the zone 4 seismic zones. So what is the behavior? What are the behavioral aspects in their lifestyle that we can actually understand? And based on that, we can actually make more robust disaster related policy making. I hope it is clear. And the final is, it helps you to understand various spatial behaviors in space. I hope it is clear. So this is how you have to write this particular 2 questions we have discussed. And beyond this, nothing is required. So focus on these content and try to memorize it, try to revise it. Most of the times, revision in Hindi is usually said as dohrana. And dohrana is Very important for this particular exam of UPSC if you want to excel. So this was a discussion on 2 questions of behavioral geography. I hope it is clear. So thank you and have a nice day.